Hey everyone, welcome to Opal Oracle. For those of you who are new, my name's Raaji. It's really nice to meet you. Aries, this is going to be your mid-October reading. I've decided to, and I am going to implement this from now on, but where the mid-month readings will coincide between the full moon and the new moon, because both of those are so important, particularly this month in October. The 5th of October is actually a full moon in Aries, which is really powerful, as you know, who you are, right? Excuse me. And then the new moon is on the 19th of October in Libra, which is actually your opposite sign, which we've been talked about last month about learning. Weird. It won't. There's something you need to say. I would actually say that you do, because actually, Aries, you have the Ace of Swords twice on the board. Strong element of speaking the truth of the matter, getting to the truth of the matter, you know, to the meat of the sandwich, if you will. This beautiful deck, this Marielle, is so amazing, but this is, I pulled one of them for your overall energy, and you received this, which I hope you can see that okay. These paintings are absolutely fantastic. It's like the truth can change you so much. You know, it can bind you if you want. It can release you if you want. But as they say, the truth always comes out in the end, right? Always. Now, for those of you who are unaware, a full moon is a really good time to think about what it is that you want to halt in your life. What processes, what would you like to stop? What would you like to complete? In those completions, putting forth and moving toward that new moon, which is about intention. And then we wait until the full moon, or whatever full moon comes that is appropriate divine timing. Right? You actually have some really great cards. Particularly, I broke this down into 4 sections, like the 4 corners of the earth, 4 archangels, however you want to take it. But it's your work, career sector, if you will, because that seems to be right now there's this little tiny bug. I bet you can't see it, but I can. There's some. The second section represents your love in general, that vibration. You know, and work is a very specific. Sorry, I just played God. Sorry. The moon is like directly in front of me, actually. It's almost the full moon. Now, sorry, I was a bit distracted there. We have to keep focus, right? So, work, love, creativity, and spirituality are the 4 corners. The first message that came out that was quite strong was your creativity section is what I was drawn to the most, although the work section has, well, actually they all have kind of deeper energies. But this creativity section is fascinating to me. It shows me that you're pinned in your mind about certain creations in your life. And that in truth, you know somewhere deep down inside of you that, you know, the best art, the best love song comes from most creations, right? To a lot of people come from heartache. You know, there's something about that. Once we hit the bottom of it, it's like we can, you know, even that little tiny bit of light coming down can inspire us to do something. Like when it's bright and sunny and whatever all the time, sometimes we forget about this creative process. We start creating in different ways. The creativity situation will be more resolved towards the new moon. So maybe there's whatever it is that you're thinking about in whatever it is that you're creating in this life. It's also below your work section, and then to the left of your spirituality. There's a decision. Well, with this card on the board, as it touches all four corners anyway, geometrically, sacredly speaking, there's a consideration about something that you're not willing to look at because you don't quite understand it yet. Rather, something you're not willing to look at yet because you do understand it. You see it. You see it happening. Like, you see it happen. This is your spirituality. This is your connection to spirit. It's the Wheel of Fortune and the Emperor. Which in truth goes back to the number 5, which is the Hierophant, which is again faith. You know, although in a sense the opposite, you know, religion is the opposite in some ways to spirituality, but the connectiveness, we only think about as humans relate things back to a particular God, because that's why all stories, religious texts have a story about taking away the language. You know, so we no longer understand one another because we could not understand one another. It was a punishment. So in truth, when someone says, oh, I'm a Buddhist or I'm a Muslim or whatever you are, there's nothing wrong in that particularly. You're just saying that you love your connection to something that's higher than you that you don't understand, right? But they're actually all saying that they believe in the same thing. It's just, again, that language barrier. So I want to say that there's something about communication this month which also makes sense with the aces and my throat. That's emphasized. I see it for those of you involved with someone, there could be like bickering, but in the sense where that bickering will be, it's connected to this progression of your spirituality, of orange too. I see the color orange quite strongly, which is your sacrum chakra, between your root and your solar plex. On the full moon as well, you probably, or towards the end of the first week, I guess, that energy takes a while, but I see that there could be misunderstandings then, particularly. Now, I see there's a heavy thought process. There's a lot of swords on the table, Aries, so... But the nice thing is basically they all go right back, I love tarot, into this ace. This ultimate truth. Which again, I hear the word release. Now your work section, I'm not really sure about this. This is a little, well, I hear the word shady, but let me look at it. You know, because in truth, that's why, like, well, we only call it the swastika because we're constantly talking about World War II because we want to set forth a particular agenda to the way that people view history and the world and whatever else. Yes, I did a tangent. But, with these energies, it's like the Hopi used it as a symbol of peace. Like even all the old, if you go to New Mexico and find like an old, like high school yearbook, they have it on the side, you know, on the binding. It's really beautiful. I mean, of course, it's entirely more ancient than that, although that particular culture there is really old and special, really sacred. But the point being is that these energies, I feel like, can fluctuate. You know, like in the Armenian version of this symbol is the rotation of seasons, you know, the spiral of life, the consistent revolution of ourselves and in this plane of existence. Because although this is in your work section, I should have set a timer. You know, this Seven of Swords is about well, traditionally, it can be about dishonesty, which would be sort of the duality to these Ace of Swords, right? Like where you have to have a conversation about something, but where I don't know how to say it. I see. If this truth, if this Ace of Swords, the element of what needs to be expressed verbally, you or someone else to you, there needs to be, but it's between people. It's between beings, but that could also possibly be like between you and spirit, but because there actually like aren't any court cards on the table. But this is general, I guess. I get kind of passionate about it. It's always deeper than, you know, if you're going to get back together with your ex, you know, it's like life's bigger than that. But the point is, with this Ace in reverse, it's basically like, generally this is a blessing, it's a new road to walk down, but it's not happening. But it's not happening because this truth, until this Ace of Swords is two aces, where in a sense I feel like there's two people in that, but until that situation has been, because right now it's like waiting. And I do feel like it has to do with your relationship, because this is Gabo in the Nordic runes. It's partnership, you know, and you're in the month of partnership, and the new moon is in Libra, which represents partnership. I see here within your relationships particularly as well, there's like a need to express yourself in, particularly within this honesty, right? It has a lot to do with where you feel internally, where someone feels internally restricted. Like that internal is not allowed to come out. There's not a fluidity between it. It wants to be, someone wants to be alive, like, and they feel restricted, you know? This person's bound. This person's bound. The only really the people that are here of any sort of person in them are all holding things, you know, unnecessarily. They're holding on to things, and the majority of them are swords. So wands can also represent communication and your creativity. Actually, and the only technical adult here that's in order is this Aries, or this card, your card. But it being in your spirituality, I see that you know that there's a revolution coming with this understanding. Within spirituality also, it's wise to stay in touch with your ancestors, to understand your history. To cloak yourself in their intuitions, like in their understanding. And although you're quite aware, being an Aries and being an I am, a first house, etc., it's important to ask yourself as well, like, you know, who am I? You know, I was telling this to another sign, but where you play this game where you write I am really big at the top of like 5 pieces of paper, or 3, whatever you want. It's helpful if it's a couple at least. But once you're done, you go back through and you write I am blank, one word. And then you finish and you come back again, and then you explain to yourself why it is that you are what you wrote down. You know, it teaches us a lot about who we are. You know, or maybe who we thought that we were and we're not anymore. Because people change. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the beauty of having the blessing of this Ace of Swords. I also want to say the reasoning probably behind this Ace of Pentacles in the reverse is that these swords are so strong, right? They're solid, like they can cut into the earth. The earth could bury a sword, but it's like rock, paper, scissors. Like the sword sort of beats the earth in a way. You know, it's even though it's air. And so it's blocking you from being able to see whatever this blessing is at this moment in time. But that's okay, because if you're trying to figure out the doubly truth of a situation, you know, maybe you don't have time to pick up a third ace. And that's alright, you know, and actually that's a wise... Within your love, if you have a relationship or like a close relationship, I see here that it was the wisest bet to not take this Ace of Pentacles, particularly probably within your finances, but of course other areas is general, but because someone let you know, like you had a conversation about it and someone explained to you why it would be too stressful to involve yourself in that situation, and reminds you something about freedom. Like being involved, like walking down that path, choosing that path of the Ace of Pentacles could be, and maybe that's where this comes in, like shady, like you know, this isn't the mindset you want to be walking down a brand new road in, which is about, you know, distrust or I mean, to me, a lot of times he represents inconsideration. You know, which means that we're just not, there's a situation that isn't being considered. So, that in itself, I clarified that pretty easily. See, sometimes you just have to, like, it takes time to figure out what the truth of the matter is. You know, and that's what these aces represent. I also see here with your spirituality sector is like, for those of you who are more on the spiritual sense versus like a standardized traditional religion, there's the wheel is turning in such a way that you're sort of interested, you're becoming more interested in what all the traditional religions are, like what that means to you, whatever you're drawn to. But mostly you'll be curious about that because of you're wondering why there is such conflict in the world. Interesting. I can dig on that. Yes, in the wider span of the Aryan people, wait, can you say it like that? The Aries people? I feel like that makes you sound like you're an air sign. The Aronians? I like that word. I keep looking at this fluorite for some reason too. That might be important to you. Lilac. This is from New Mexico. Got it straight out of the ground. You know, this Emperor's wearing purple too. He's actually the only card wearing purple that has this deep violet, which in truth, actually, you know, if this is also representing you and you sitting within this spiritual realm, which is relates to every realm, right? The color purple was actually a color of royalty originally. So we're told within Western culture. I'm sure actually that it existed, or maybe it didn't because it's not wet enough. Basically, the color, I'll have to look up to I didn't know about, alright, sorry, I'm having like a side thought to remember. The story that I knew about, I've been questioning a lot lately, you know, the story I found out about the color purple is that they came from snails. That's how you receive that deep purple color. But at the time, people, you know, you can eat snails. It's food. And so, you know, you wouldn't use food to dye something if that was the whole food, you know, the only thing you had to eat. So people of wealth, people of power, of higher positions within society were allowed to have, like, that's why drapes are generally this color. Okay? And that's probably why he also represents hierarchy. I just heard waste not, want not, in ways of your spirituality. I also see a shift. There is a shift within the structure of your spirituality also. And I keep seeing it in line with this, because the pentacles represent your psyche, but sometimes to me they can also represent, I mean, I guess all the cards in a way can represent spirituality, but, you know, this is a new path and it's in line. Alright, let's choose a Stitchomancy, huh, to close out this reading. So this is this beautiful book called The Finite and Infinite Games by James P. Carth. It's a wonderful book. I've been talking about it since I started the channel. I don't know if any of you picked it up. It's lovely. It's small, but it's so deep. Okay, Aries, October. Okay, this is what you received. Just as Alexander wept upon learning, he had had no more enemies to conquer, Finite players come to rue their victories unless they see them quickly challenged by a new danger. A war fought to end all wars in the strategy of finite play only breeds universal warfare. The strategy of the infinite player is horizontal. They do not go to meet putative enemies with power and violence, but with poiesis. Is that how you say that? Poiesis? 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 Excuse that, I've never seen that word. But with poiesis and vision. They invite them to become a people in passage. Infinite players do not rise to meet arms with arms. Instead, they make use of laughter, vision, surprise to engage the state and put its boundaries back into play. What will undo any boundary is the awareness that is our vision and not what we are viewing that is limited. Which in truth, if that's all this Ace of Swords, it's like there's no need to bind ourselves, you know. We can free ourselves from anything whenever we want. It's beautiful that we have that choice to choose, to look at the world in a different way. I mean, why is it that we believe what we believe? Why is it the way that we look at life, the way that we look at it? You know? What parts do we like about the way that we look at it, and what parts scare us, and why is it that they scare us? You know? And let's figure that, you know, all of that out, and then move along accordingly. Alright, Aries. Tarot's so fascinating. For any of you still watching, thanks for being here. It's really special. I'm really happy to be able to help people, like, you know, I guess it's always been one of my purposes, so it's nice to be appreciated in that effort, you know, so thanks. Alright, until November, peace.